us as well at NCDDC metadata at NOAA.gov, or if you could, you can also use the question pane in the webinar and ask the question there. That way we can kind of record the questions as we go along. These are the materials. Again, just kind of review the materials that we've been using for the series. They're available on our FTT. If you go to the FTT Online ISO training and then go to the ISO series, which is going to be the series that we're using here. Some other resources is the NOAA EDM Wiki, which is the Environmental Data Management Wiki for NOAA. The URL is there. And also some of the workbooks that we've been using, especially for this exercise that we've done today for the last class, is available at ncddc.noaa.gov/metadata standards. Those workbooks are available there. What we're going to do is go over the basic, some of the tools that we've come across and been found helpful for creating and editing ISO metadata. Before we do that, I'd like to go over our questions, the questions that we had for last session. So we're going to go to those questions. Excuse me. We're going to go to the getting familiar with ISO 19115, the questions that we had. Is anybody, can people hear me? You're having trouble with the audio? Is that better? Okay. All right, so the first thing we want to do is go over the questions from last time when we just talked about the ISO workbooks and how to locate information. So the first question we had was, what is the definition of the data element west bounding longitude? And the question, the answer there is the westernmost coordinate of the limit of the data set expressed in decimal degrees. And that was, you could find that in the workbook. So, and if you have any trouble, locating that in the workbook, let us know. We'll give you the exact page and how to find that information out. Second question, is individual name repeatable? That's part of that CI contact information package. Individual name is not repeatable in that, within that group of CI responsible party. That's one thing that you have to keep an eye on, is that everything is like in group packages. So that individual element, individual name is not repeatable. But if you go up to a tag, the tag that is above that, the cited responsible party, that tag is repeatable. So if you have more than one individual name that you want to record, you would have to make that element, that package, repeatable. Question 3 is file identifier mandatory. And here we're looking at the MD metadata. And the answer to this question is it really just depends. In ISO 19115, it's not mandatory, but it's recommended as a best practice. If you're using the NAP, or the North American Profile, that is a mandatory element. So you got to keep in mind that you have the basic, the 19115, but then you have some profiles, or profiles that may have been developed from it. So as far as just the base 19115, file identifier is not a mandatory element. Question 4, where does projection information belong? That is going to be in your reference system info. So, and we talked about how sometimes you might just have a an element, or you might just refer to like an ESPG registry information. So it may be you may just be pointing to a component in a registry and not listing all of the elements in that projection information. But that is where your projection information would go, would be in the reference system info. Is data identification mandatory? Again, that depends. It's more of a conditional element. So identification information is mandatory in your 19115 and 115-2 record itself, but there has to be at least an occurrence of either data identification or service identification. So you can either document the data or the service, or you could also document both. What if my date is unknown? Then how can I record that? What do I do? This is where we talked about previously in the XML for the ISO elements. We talked about the attributes. In this case, what you want to do is use the nil reason attribute to indicate that you have this element, it's mandatory, but I don't have that information is unknown. So then you would be able to use that nil reason attribute unknown to explain why that element is not included. Number 7, what elements are repeatable within the MD keywords? The repeatable element in that MD keywords is keyword. So you can have multiple keywords, but then you'd only have like one thesaurus that you would identify with that specific set of keywords. Number 8, what is the domain for status? And this is talking about the status for MD. This is pointing to MD metadata identification info, MD data identification status. So in here you have the MD status code list. So you're using a code list for the status here. So in this code list you have the options of completed, historical archive, obsolete, ongoing, planned, required, or under development. So those, the domain for that is expressed in a code list, which you have a lot. A lot of code lists in ISO. Number 9, where would you document a process step? And that's going to be data quality. Data quality, lineage, and then process step. So that's on in your workbook. It's on page 87. So that's one of the things that you want to know, the process step. And then number 10, how would you document a range of dates? The range of dates is going to be in your EX package. EX extent, temporal extent, the EX temporal extent time period. So that is how you would identify that. You just got to think about navigating into your workbook. Just navigate to where the different elements are and find the definitions and the how you would document that information. So that's the workbook questions. Now we're going to go this time on to tools. We're going to talk about different tools for creating and editing ISO metadata. What we're going to go over is not a real comprehensive list. We're just going to talk about some of the most common ones or things that we have become familiar with. There's different tools that are depending on what your user needs are, and also what you have available. There's desktop versus web applications. You have some desktop applications, some web applications. Then you have GUIs and then XML editors. Think of GUIs might be something more for someone that is just entering the information, and they're not really as concerned with some of the other aspects of the metadata, just kind of getting the information capture. So it's for the more for the beginners or people who are just providing the basic information, like identification of who the parties are, that type of information. The XML is for more experienced users of the standards who are more familiar with the XML because it provides them with more flexibility. This is one of the tools for people that are familiar with NetCDF. It's called NCISO, and it is a command line utility for automating metadata analysis and ISO metadata generation for the threads catalog. What the NCISO tool does is it traverses the threads catalog, reads the dataset documentation, and translates that documentation into different views using extensible style sheet language translations. Two style sheets are currently supported in NCISO. First is a graphical comparison or a rubric of the existing documentation with the Unidata data discovery conventions with guidance on how to use these conventions to facilitate data discovery. And the second aspect of the NCISO tool is the translation of discovery elements from the NCML into the ISO 19115. So the NCISO also adds 3 new service types to your existing thread server. The 3 new services included are the NCML. This is a service that adds the geospatial extent information if it's not already been documented. The UDDC. This is a metadata analysis service that adds geospatial extent information if it's not already. And this is a metadata analysis service which scores the quality of your NCML compared to the Unidata data discovery conventions. And then finally, you have the ISO, which is the ISO 19115 metadata service, which helps to gather that information and translate it into an ISO record itself. So this is something that might be helpful if you have a lot of NetCDF or if you're interested in using the Threads data server. The next tool that we have here is the Mermaid, which is NCDDC's Metadata Enterprise Research Management Aid. And this is a tool that we have that supports mostly the FGDC, CSDGM, and the different profiles. But we have also built into the tool a translation from the CSDGM, the biological, and the remote sensing, so that if you have a record that is in Mermaid, in those profiles or the metadata standards, then you can export that record into the ISO 19115-2. And so you can have that exported record. And you can also export it, the feature catalog, if you have a section 5, if you have an entity and attribute section. So the good things about the benefits of Mermaid is that it does have that native FGDC editing. It exports the ISO, the 19115-2, and then the feature catalog, the 19110. It has excellent validation, and then you're also able to ingest and export records from Mermaid, and it's platform independent. It's an online editing tool. The challenges for the use of Mermaid as far as ISO metadata is that there's no native ISO editing. So what you get from Mermaid is an export of your existing FGDC record. And so if you want to edit it beyond that, you'll have to use another ISO editor. Another tool that is useful for 19115 metadata record is the CatMD Edit. This is a desktop tool that you can just use on your desktop, and it is basically shows you all the hierarchical structure of the ISO metadata. Like you can see at the top, you have your metadata file identifier, and it also uses kind of like a color coding thing of what's mandatory and then what is optional in the record, so that you can expand your hierarchy. Then, for instance, here it's showing that you're at the title element. You click on the title, and then you would edit that record in that editor. It also supports a lot of different profiles, especially a lot of the European profiles. Like it has the NEM metadata profile, which is a recommendation defined by the Spanish National Geographic High Board that includes all the elements in the 19115 core metadata for geographic data sets. It also has the NCISO profile, so it supports the NCISO implementing rules for metadata. So this profile has been customized to meet the requirements set up in the directive of the European Parliament and the Council for the spatial information in that NCISO community. It also has a WISE metadata profile, which is a water information system for Europe. That is another profile. So these, you can see, have these different profiles. It also imports like the FGDC, the CSDGM, and the Dublin Core. So it has a variety of metadata standards that it supports. Also with the CAT-MD edit, it has some customization of the tool available to support new standards and metadata profiles according to user needs. And also, if you upload some of the different file formats, such as a shapefile or a GeoTIFF or different, some of these different files, then it will automatically generate that metadata information and put it in the correspondingly in your correct location for the ISO 19115 metadata. It also has, for the get capabilities operation, it will produce some automated metadata generation for your service metadata as well. Another metadata editor is that we're showing here is the Geo Network. This has a GUI interface that you can use that is within the Geo Network tool. The Geo Network is more of a complete catalog package. So it's an application to help you manage your spatially referenced resources. So it also has a lot of different multiple standards that it supports, including the 19139, the CSDGM, the ISO, the basic 19195, and then the 19115-2, and it also includes some of the other metadata standards that would be within that group. It also is platform independent, multilingual, and it's a web application that you can use to create your metadata. It's, you know, it's kind of like you can include for use within the application itself, and also some of the other metadata records. You can also do it externally. You have the it has the GUI, but then it also has it also includes an XML editor, so you can have an XML view, and then you can have that that included. You know, you can directly edit your XML. It's a free download, and there's the link to the Geo Network open source. So the benefits of it is that it does have a variety of ISO standards that it supports, which is good for that element. You know, that you can have a variety of things supported. You can, and it also validates against the 19139, so it makes sure that it follows that technical specification for the ISO records. It has good validation, so you can, within the tool, so that you can make sure that your records are valid. It also ingests and exports in batch records. And because it is a whole catalog tool, it also has a search interface within the tool so that you can locate your records that you have uploaded or created within the tool. It's platform independent, and it does have that GUI interface, so that can be, really a helpful thing for people that when you're just getting used to or using the ISO standard, it's helpful to keep that structure and hierarchical structure available. It can be a little tricky to start up because it is, like I said, it's a whole catalog package, so it's not just looking at the editor. You're also having to install a whole package. And the validation errors are sometimes a little hard to understand because they're pointing more of the errors that are in the XML itself. So they're kind of like XML errors and not necessarily translated into simpler to understand. Then there's no biological or NAT support within that if that is something that you need or interested in. And also the transform engine doesn't support the XPath 2.0. So that's another challenge. This is another editor, the ISO Morph, which is a web-based tool. This is basically like an XML record generator from a customizable web-based GUI. So it's a metadata creation and editing tool that supports the 19115 record with an easy-to-use graphical interface. So this allows you to essentially type in your information in this web browser and then export out an XML record, an individual XML record. And it also has good validation within it, so you can be assured that the information that you enter is going to be in the valid information and the valid format for your ISO record. It has linked help features within the tool, and then it's also platform independent, and it has your graphical user interface. That it also supports the X-links, so that is a benefit that it supports some of those XML attributes, and then also it has drop-down lists. And it also enables you to ingest existing metadata for editing. So that is one of the benefits, is that it's a free-to-use tool. It supports the 19115-2. It has good validation. It is linked to the ISO workbook. It's platform independent. And you can insert existing metadata. It doesn't have any sort of, it doesn't save these records. It's just basically you enter the information and then you export it as an XML record. So you have to save it externally, and it doesn't have any internal validation, just the validation as you enter that information. So this is the link to the ISO Morph. If you're interested in that, or that's actually the information to the tool. If you're interested, you can contact using the email address. Another tool that we're using is that we're going to introduce here is the Geoportal. Geoportal is a tool that is similar in like the Geo Network, in that it is a tool that's used within a whole package that kind of supports the metadata ingest and creation in a catalog environment. So this is an example of the Geoportal editor within the catalog environment that has the 19115-1115 data, and then you can see that you have the different tabbed interfaces where you can enter your information. It has the Geoportal supports like a partial FGDC, CSDGM, remote sensing, ISO 19115, the 119-2, and the 19110. It will auto-populate some fields from the information that is within the Geoportal from some of the those fields, and it also provides some drop-down menus that are helpful for entering that information. And it has an integrated workflow within the Geoportal system so that you can enter the information to create metadata records that would then be searchable within that Geoportal system. There's a few things that it has things you can't add any keywords for the -2 and some other fields. And it also says it supports the -2, but it doesn't allow the documentation of acquisition information. So it does support the different standards, perhaps not to the complete degree that some some metadata documentation would require, since it focuses more on the discovery of the metadata within the system. It has no biological support, so it doesn't support the biological profile within Geoportal for the metadata records. The transform engine, it doesn't support the XPath 2.0, and it only supports a few XML attributes. And you also can't edit the auto-populated fields without editing the code. So this is the Esri, the Geoportal, and they're linked to the where they have the information on the SourceForge location. Another tool that's available is the Ultima Authentic. What this does is this is a free content editor provided by Authentic that allows non-technical business users to easily view and edit data in the XML documents and relational databases without being exposed to the underlying technology. So essentially, this helps people that are not going to be writing the code or the XML, but are just going to be entering information. It kind of gives them that that GUI interface, so that they don't have to, they don't have to edit all the XML, or even look at the XML if they don't need to do that. So it's available as a desktop application or a browser plugin, so that you can use it either with a web application or with the desktop application. So it gives you an advanced XML and database authoring options. So this is something that can be used with XML editors, but it doesn't require you to have that XML editing knowledge in depth. The benefits of the Ultima Authentic is that it is a free tool and it's customizable, creates a customizable GUI versus via the different skins that you can create, which are then can be utilized either in a desktop environment or a web-based environment. The challenges to that is that the skin development has to be done externally. So this allows people to enter the information and use the information, but not to necessarily develop that that skin or that GUI interface. That would be done with another application. Then we're going to talk about a couple of different XML editors here. And again, with all of these, it's not really an endorsement of different products. It's just some of those ones that we're more familiar with. And one of those is the XMLSpy. So So XMLSpy is it's an advanced XML editor that can be used to edit, transform, and debug XML-related technologies. So it's a pretty powerful tool as far as working with XML. And when you're working with the ISO metadata, it really is an XML-driven technology in that you're working with different XML metadata record instances itself, and then you're using the XML schemas to validate that information, and then the transforms to transform that information. So XML editors are good tools to do this and to do these operations. Again, this is showing XMLSpy with the skin that could then be used, for instance, like that Authentic tool, so that you could then use this tool without the XMLSpy package. So this is showing the skin within the XML editor. So that's the information for Ultima's XMLSpy. The benefits are, as an XML editor, it does have a lot more power, and then it can support just about any metadata standard if you have the schemas available to use within the tool. It's easy to edit. It has a lot of batch functionalities so that you can do operations on large numbers of XML records. It also has nice graphics that can be generated from the schemas. It also can do transformations, so that if you have metadata records that you need to transform from one standard to another, you can use this tool to do that, and also to perform some validation through the XML schema itself, using those schemas with the XML records. The challenges are that it is a little, they are not free tools, and you have to know XML. So you have to be pretty familiar with XML, and within the standard that you're using, you want to be familiar with the schemas and how to develop the XML records from those. Then we have another similar tool here, the Oxygen XML Editor. This is similar to the XML editor like XMLSpy, in that you can create a lot of XML technologies. You can work with a lot of XML technologies such as XML databases and web services and different things like that. It also has different levels and of capabilities. Like it has an XML author, which is more for editing the XML, and that automatically comes configured with a lot of different style sheets and basically some of the templates for different XML editing modes. The XML editor is basically a cross-platform application, and it can be used on all the major operating systems like Windows, Mac, Linux, and Solaris, and it can either be used as a standalone or Eclipse plugin. So that's some of the capabilities that are available with Oxygen as the XML editor. Again, like the like XMLSpy, it has a lot more benefits. Are that it has a lot more power, being an XML editor, and that it's able to support any standard if you have the schemas available. It's easy to edit. You can do batch functions and perform transformations, and also you can do transformations you have to set up transformation scenarios, and you can also validate your XML for the different schemas. So we've got that ISO metadata review as well. So those are some of the metadata tools that we've been kind of used the most often and the most familiar with. Also, the ISO Metadata Editor Review is something that the FGDC did one a few years ago, where they took a lot of the different metadata editors and they did a comparison of those editors that were user supported. I mean, they had user input, but then it also was vendor reported. So currently the FGDC is working on another review to kind of update some of those things. So that should be coming out soon. So that'll be something that would be good to look at. What they're doing is just asking the different vendors for information about the ISO metadata editors that they support. And then those are some of the basic tools that we have come across and used to create your basic metadata records. Just establishing the record itself, using the schema to make sure that everything is valid. There's some other records some other tools that are available, such as NGDC has some tools that are available in a web interface for record services. So they can do some of this kind of on a file-by-file basis, either a record that you would upload or that you would just point to the URL so that you could check and make sure that your record is well formed, see if it's resolve the record. Also, you can check the links. You can do a rubric to see if there's anything available. I mean, to see kind of how your record scores against the rubrics that NGDC has developed, that NOAA has developed to test and see, kind of give it a score of how much information is complete. So those are some of the things that you can do at the NGDC Record Services site. Also, we talked somewhat about the different components in the ISO metadata record, where you basically would have a link to like a snippet or a more complete piece of records, whether it's like the CI responsible party or different components. NGDC also has a component registry called DocuComp, where you can enter these components, and it'll provide you with a UUID that can be used in your record. So there's also, and this is where the record services is also available off of this web page. So you've got your DocuComp there. This is another tool that we want to, or actually kind of a location registry. We talked about the ESPG for doing the registry for your reference systems coordinates. That is available at the EPSGregistry.org. That provides you with that information for your reference system. So that is all of the tools that we have to go over here. And like I said, it's not a comprehensive list by any means. So you may be familiar with some different tools, and we would encourage anybody to kind of share different tools that they use or experiences that they've had with different tools as well, as we kind of, just try to learn more about these different tools and best ways to approach developing ISO metadata. So do we have any questions? Okay, Leanne, do you have a question? Hello? Leanne, did you have a question? Okay, I think, did you type up your question, Leanne? Looks like you did. Okay, all right. Nathan? Okay, there's a question.
Right.
I'm sorry, Ed.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So thanks, Kathy. I asked them on the questions chat, but since most people I don't think see that, obviously you haven't showed us desktop tools, particularly ArcGIS for desktop, 9.3, 10.0, 10.1, or any other commercial off-the-shelf GIS desktop clients like MapInfo or Autodesk Map 3D or GeoMedia, and I think I understand probably why. Some of those are directly reviewed by the FGDC in their review of ISO metadata editors. Is that right?
Yes, they had a review about 2 years ago, I think was their last one, and they had a lot of different tools there.
Right, and I think they're in the process of updating that survey as well, just to make it more contemporary.
They're contacting the different vendors and asking them for, information on the tools. Yes.
Do you have any thoughts or comments about using those tools?
Well, I think a lot of the times the decision of what kind of tool you're going to use really depends on your environment and your requirements. If you're working within a GIS, system environment, then it would make more sense to you, of course, to use an editor that's integrated within that system. And if you're using, oftentimes we may have situations where the information is not really related to, with that GIS information, and it's kind of more of a maybe more of a one-off type of record, or records that are developed out of information that's stored in a database, or different type of database.
Okay, so it might be good to document GIS data that you might have local control over, but I mean, those desktop tools maybe, but it might be more useful to use some of the other XML editors to document a web resource or Yeah, like you said, a non-geospatial database, so to speak. Maybe it's geospatially enabled in other ways. Maybe it's point locations that are just in it as XY coordinates in a tabular database, for example.
Right.
Okay. Are there any particular drawbacks or benefits in using any of the desktop GIS clients? Or what risks should we be aware of, if any?
That is not, that would really, like I said, it kind of depends on what your environment is, and then what your what your requirements are for as far as what your output is. If you have if your requirement is to make this available in clearinghouse, that sort of information, I mean that sort of environment, then that would kind of drive your
direction. Yeah. Okay. But
like I said, there are the tools that we touched on are just the ones that we were familiar with, and the ones that we have found kind of useful, but understanding that there are a lot more tools that are developed maybe just for one person or one group's specific needs. And that's why I'm saying if anybody has things that they find useful, sharing that information is I think the best avenue.
But there's nothing to your mind that have serious compliance issues with the standards, any of the tools that you've listed, and we'd have to take a look on those that have been reviewed by the FGDC?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And they had some questions about making the answer key available. Yeah, we can send that out to folks. And I have a question here about, does Mermaid support translation of EML metadata to ISO? And Mermaid does not support that translation within the tool. It does. It does have like a native EML editor that we had developed kind of as a beta testing environment, but it does not support that EML translation. Then there's some other questions about just list of tools being used within within NOAA. That I would refer to the EDMC wiki. It has some different tools that have been used within NOAA, and also that would be a good place to kind of put more information if you have it, or anything else that you want to look into. Okay, so it looks like we don't have, does anybody else have another question? Okay, so we'll go ahead and end the session today, and next week we'll have our next series. Same time, it'll be 9:30 on Tuesday. And again, I will send out some of the answers to these questions that we have got. We'll compile those. All right. Well, thank y'all and have a great day.